Welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Robertson. Now we're just going to jump right into this week's model because, well, my excitement level is high. Behind me, the 2017 Mazda 6. Now, why am I such a big fan? Well, I'm a big fan of Mazda. I own several vehicles myself. My family owns several, and, well, we've just had it in the family lines for decades. So this little test drive has some family heritage. One thing about my excitement level when it comes to Mazda is really their evolution. Now, I've had one years ago, the Mazda B2000 pickup truck, and even the CX-9, and my parents just the same. So we've had several vehicles in the Mazda lineup, and what we've seen is obviously the evolution. The Mazda 6 here, definitely far from whence I came. Now, what I like is the profile. Now, it's really contrasting even the competition. Now, it blends a little bit, maybe even Regal Infiniti with some voluptuous curves here and there. I look at the Subaru Legacy. It has a similar midline, but this one really sweeping from the front, coming down just a little bit, and coming back. So there is always a blending between the competitions, but I think the Mazda 6 does it the best. Besides the exterior, one place the Mazda 6 truly shines is in the overall numbers, really in the upper sizing of the mid-size segment. Now, what you see here is about 191 inches, wheelbase fairly stretched at around 111. Now, that's going to help smooth out the bumps, and really also all the wheels are about pushed as far to the corner. Now, the front track to note is about 0.4 inches wider than the rear. As for ground clearance, really snug on the road, but really not as low as you would think, around about half a foot. That compared to some other vehicles that are really snug into about that 5-inch range. What's great about that is, well, a little bit more height here means a little bit better ingress for someone my height. Now, some other numbers really is overall width. Typical 6 foot wide, but the height around about 57 inches. So they're keeping it nice and tight down to the ground, and you can see that in the aerodynamics. Now, one thing to note with this very arching roof, how does that affect the headroom in that second row? What I like at the four corners here is really the shoes this vehicle is wearing. First, starting with the wheel size, instead of standard 17-inch wheels, it's upgraded here with 19-inch versions. What you also see is the rim itself. Instead of going with more of a cheap, bright chrome accent, really making this vehicle seem awkward, instead, this vehicle is ready to go to the prom. Nice dark appointed rim, really a smoky kind of appearance, something you see across the industry that the vehicles are turning towards, really taking the wow factor out of the rims and making it more, well, regal and sleek looking. One glance at the grille warfare on this Mazda really sets it apart as well, and it comes down again to the smooth sculpting. Now, chiseling has been an epidemic in this market, but what they do here is a little bit more refinement, almost like it's been on the potter's wheel just a hair longer. It all comes together again at the front end. A lot of vehicles really protruding out, nosing into traffic, and you see definitely some niches here and there. Now, what I like is, of course, this chrome accent that sweeps down here. Not too gimmicky, doesn't look like a smiley face. They do a dual accent here for the grille, even shield the Mazda emblem under kind of a clear glass. What I also like is this is LED supported. At night, this provides kind of an added element down here, really jazzing it up even better. Now, flaring is really cool, and they of course do it really well down here. This front end really protruding quite a bit if you look at this compared to the rest of the hood. Headlights from the old days used to be just plopped on the front end, forgot about, but now they're pieces of art, all adorned under a nice clear lens. And you can see that here on the Mazda 6, really looking like a Waterford crystal, presenting nice arching here, really just a sculpture. Of course, it functions quite well going down the road. Now, these headlights are dynamic, meaning pretty much as you sweep in a curve, they're going to sweep ahead of you, really illuminating. What's really interesting, as you sweep down and look at the fog light, well, they're far from the old days. Basically nice and small versus the big old contraptions I remember growing up. One thing to expect on any vehicle is really the smart key system. What's great here on the Mazda 6 is the key fob alone is really small. We've seen some of the vehicles lately making a big monstrosity of this. Really, this is nice and simple. Now, what I like here on this vehicle is, again, the ease of ingress when it relates to that key. A simple one-touch button to unlock the driver's door. Press it again, it'll unlock the rest. Really just a level of security, because if you're by yourself, you really only need to unlock one door. Now, one thing to note with the mirrors, of course, they're being more advanced, the blind spot awareness. Again, vehicles do that different. Here, it's going to be an indicator light here on the mirror versus some type of light there inside the cabin. Now, sweep around to the back, the good old security when it comes to fill up will make this quick and simple. A nice release lever there inside the car. pops this open. Once it's open though, you'll see the old school, which means there's a cap. Swinging around to the business end of any sedan, this is where it's really got to deliver just as much as it's going to deliver on the inside, because after all, you have people, they're going to have cargo. Now when it comes to design, they couple it quite nicely with the front end. A little bit more subdued, but fairly decent. Now where it all comes together, the back glass is really sweeping down, so something you don't want to do is really contrast that with some type of skateboard ramp. Instead, modest rear deck lid, even the spoiler continuing that angle, and it does come out just a hair. A little bit of chrome accents, and really the only thing really protruding back here is a somewhat modest rear bumper. Now as for safety, you'll notice on this vehicle there is no backup sensors, but we did find that the backup camera provided plenty of good rear view. Now as for the interior volume here, what you're going to notice, a nice electronic release and decent interior volume, just under 15 cubic feet. Now one thing I like about trunks is they really provide a somewhat cavernous area, and sometimes you really got to get a lot of items in here. Now there's only so much of an opening that you can fit things in here. Big boxes just won't work. What I also like is the rear deck really swings up out of the way. Nice support here, and really the housing's all decorated nice and neat under some fascia here, really making it look nice and pretty. Now what happens sometimes is you take items here and they've got to extend into the cabin, and the way they make that easy is right here with these handles. A lot of times you got to go inside the vehicle, but instead right here, nice pull handle, pull that, then you climb inside to continue the operation. Now I've already released the second row there in the trunk with the good old handle. Now I'm going to do the operation. Now what's great is really this tumbles forward with ease, and with the design of the front seat backs, really with the sculpting, it allows them to lay flat even with the headrest in place. With the split rear bench as well, basically can seat people and cargo and really change this however you want. Now what I also like is the design back here. First, the bright white leather really contrasts a lot of what I've test drove lately, and you'll notice the differentiated seating positions on the outer side with a slight raised hump in the middle, to be expected. Now as for the legroom on the floor, there is a slight hump there as well. Now what you'll also find is decent elbow support here. Now one thing that would help is if there's some type of pull tab here, really makes it a little bit hard to get that down. Once it's down though, what you'll notice is a nice elevation here when it comes to elbow support. Even better, heated seats, press right here and it heats up your bottom. To match the seats, you'll see equal appointments there on the door, contrasting the darker accents you see on the dash, really giving an overall sporty feel and something you expect on a somewhat youthful looking vehicle. Now as for legroom numbers, those are definitely grown numbers. Up front around about 42 inches, back seat about 38 inches. That pretty much meant I could spread out anywhere I wanted to sit. Centered on the dash is the good old touchscreen system, specifically a 7-inch screen, and you can reach up here and use the touchscreen system to navigate through. A little home screen button up here as well really allows you to navigate with these, but again, it is a fairly long stretch away from the driver. Instead, you're definitely going to want to use the central knob there between the front occupants. That allows you to dial around, press it, and navigate so much easier. The central control knob is placed exactly where it needs to be. Pretty much your hand's going to end up right on top of it. Now what I like is the function. It twists and navigates with ease, also toggles back and forth, really navigating any screen however it needs to be manipulated. What I also like is the shortcuts. Nice home screen button here, press the shortcut for the music, or even the back button if you get lost. There are corresponding buttons on the steering wheel, but I also like the knob because it makes volume control so much quicker and more intuitive because it's right where your hand's going to be anyway. Reach over, turn it up and down. For climate controls, you'll find two symmetric knobs, basically dialing in dual zone temperature up front. The little readout right here doesn't relate to the screen up above, which is fine because everything's in one nice location. As for the mode select, you can find that real easy around here. As for fan speed, something we've seen across the board lately is no more is there a knob, but instead a push button for fan speed. This does make it kind of a navigating, you have to look for these buttons, but it's just what everyone else is doing. Now as for other functions, there is heated seats up front as well, and a nice heated steering wheel. Between the front seats, you'll find a nice sleek cover here, basically giving you nice support when you're using this knob. But of course, if you need drinks to have a place to sit, Open this up and you have 2 places, really gripping your drinks quite easily and very cavernous. Now as for front elbow support, you'll notice that the armrest is somewhat tight, a little bit small, and it will become somewhat of a fight with your passenger. But what I truly like is what lies beneath. Really deep storage and also connectivity, 2 USB connections and a power supply. This vehicle did have adaptive cruise control, pretty much set it right here on the steering wheel, and on the left side you do have controls for entertainment. As for gauge cluster, pretty much going a little bit old school and retro with a cylinder-like shape. Good old oversized speedometer right in the middle. Now one thing I was looking for was for the digital readout for speed, but of course that's done in a heads-up like display with that little bit of glass that pops up when a car comes on. When you pop the hood, one thing you'll notice is no V6, but instead a refined 4-cylinder, what they refer to as the SkyActiv technology. Now it's going to be specifically a 2.5 liter inline 4-cylinder engine. Now it's going to deliver around about 184 horses and 185 foot-pounds of torque. Now this particular engine was coupled with a 6-speed automatic transmission. Now as for the numbers, I truly didn't test it, but expect 0 to 60 to be just under 8 seconds. That does it for this edition of Road Warrior and a test drive behind the wheel of the 2017 Mazda 6. Now some things we liked was really the outside, really turned heads, and people took notice, specifically even with that grille warfare and all this sculpting and niches and nooks and crannies that make this vehicle unique. Of course, it really delivered on the inside, and I like the 2-tone leather we had this time around. Really bright white accents coupled with that darker interior. Overall though, lots of operation. When it comes to innovations, extra room, and of course plenty of space in that rear cargo area. Now as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.